Okay, so I just watched Peter Pan and Wendy last night, and all I have to say is that that movie was an absolute dumpster fire. There was not one thing that went right throughout that whole movie. From the first 5 minutes that I started watching it, I just wanted to turn it off, to tell you the truth. However, I knew I had to watch it so I could record this video, sadly. But the movie was so bad, from the story, to the plot, to the characters, to the tension, to the choreography. Everything went wrong with this film. And I'm going to get started talking about the story. The first thing that I absolutely hated about Peter Pan and Wendy is that they took what was a great classic story and destroyed the whole point of it. They destroyed the whole meaning of Peter Pan. And the whole meaning to the original Peter Pan was all about how important women are in our lives. We saw the Lost Boys, who were all boys in the original story.
But you're not all boys. So?
And we saw that they thought they were doing okay. They thought they were doing fine. However, when Wendy comes into their life, they realize that they needed that feminine impact. They realized they needed that maternal instinct in their life, and they learnt the beauty of the balance between masculinity and femininity. And that was so important and integral to the original Peter Pan story, is it showed that you can't survive just running off masculine energy. You can't survive just being around masculine people. You have to have femininity in your life, and the beauty of life is that we can have that incredible dance between masculinity and femininity. That was the whole point to the original Peter Pan story. However, they went and completely blew it up with this film by making the Lost Boys not all boys.
So?
By having girls in there, you destroy the whole point of the story, because it's meant to be about how important women are in our life, and that these boys thought they were doing okay, but once a woman came into their life, they realized that they needed that. But when you have a bunch of women in there already and a bunch of girls in there, they don't need that at all. Right there, you blew up the whole point to the original Peter Pan movie. So how it came across was that they just used the Peter Pan name to get bums in seats and watch a horrible rendition of the story, because they didn't actually tell the story of Peter Pan. This movie is a completely different story. However, they just used the name Peter Pan and Wendy to make money and get people to watch it, because they knew if they made a movie like this about the topics that they made a movie about, no one would want to watch it. And one of the worst parts of the movie was just how slow and sluggish it was. From the acting to the choreography to the whole pacing of the movie, it was just so slow and boring. And for a movie to be an hour and 40 minutes, so a very short film, and come across this slow and monotonous, it is so bad. Now, the biggest problem with it was that there was no pacing to the film. They didn't really find a rhythm. They didn't find a vibe for the whole movie. So it basically just came across as this long, lackadaisical fart, if I'm telling you the truth. But one of the worst bits was the choreography. Now, this shows how slow this film really was, because through the choreography of the movie, the sword fights between Peter Pan and Captain Hook, the sword fighting is so slow. There's no real fast pace to it. The music doesn't come in to add tension. You don't feel any tension at all. It literally looks like a bunch of 7-year-olds just having a toy sword fight. The movie basically came across like they gave student filmmakers a budget of $100 million and told them to make a movie. That's how it came across, because there was no real choreography. I don't even know if they got in someone to do the choreography for the sword fights, because they came across as so cheap, so pointless, and so boring. There was never any real intensity brought in through those fight scenes. And in the first Peter Pan movie and the couple sequels that came after it, those were one of the best bits. Whenever they've had those fight scenes between Captain Hook and Peter Pan, there was so much intensity there, and you were so invested into the fight because you didn't know what was going to happen, because the choreography was good. However, in this movie, I don't think anyone watching this film will watch these fight scenes and actually be on the edge of their seat, because it doesn't look like Peter Pan's ever going to lose, and he's doing the worst sword moves ever, and Captain Hook, who's meant to be this great, dangerous pirate, can't even defend himself. Like, it was honestly horrible. And that leads me to the worst part of the whole plot and story of this film, and it was just this constant preachy message of how bad men are, and specifically Peter Pan. They use Peter Pan to be the sort of metaphor for all men and to symbolize all men, and they make Peter Pan the villain in his own movie. Yet Peter Pan never does anything wrong. He never actually does anything that bad to anyone, but yet all they ever do is talk about how bad he is and how he's patronizing Tinkerbell and some of the girls in The Lost Boys, apparently. He's patronizing them as well, but you never actually see it. And so you constantly have the movie basically put on pause for them to just push this preachy message that they never show. And that's one of the first rules of filmmaking, is that show it, don't say it. That's the rule. Show what you mean to say. Don't actually say it. Yet this movie, they don't show anything wrong with Peter Pan. They don't show anything wrong with men. Men are never patronizing women, yet women are constantly picking on the men, saying that they're patronizing them. Now, I would have no problem with this film if they actually showed women living in a patriarchal world, and they were showing how men were being mean to the women and putting the women down and keeping them down. But if you never show it, why am I going to believe the female characters when they start preaching about how they're pushed down, how they never get a voice, never get a chance in life? Why don't you show me? Because if you don't show me, you can't empathize with it, right? It's impossible to empathize with something when you're not actually seeing it. It just looks like they're lying, and it just pauses the whole film to just push this preachy message. And talking about preachy messaging, that just leads me on to the characters. One being Tinkerbell. They basically used Tinkerbell as a symbol for voiceless women, which meant Tinkerbell had no lines. So Tinkerbell, who was this great character that everyone seemed to love, they basically gave no character to in the movie. There was no actual point to her being in this film at all. She says nothing. She gets one line at the end of the movie, which basically sums up the whole point to her character for the film, which is this voiceless woman who's actually behind Peter Pan's greatness. So at the end of the movie, she says to Wendy, "Thank you for hearing me." I mean, come on. They just completely ruined one of the greatest and most loved childhood story characters of all time. And what makes this worse was that they made such a big thing about casting a black Tinkerbell, yet when they cast a black Tinkerbell, they take away all her lines. So basically, you just fan baited us. You just cast this black Tinkerbell and said, look, we've made a black Tinkerbell, this is huge, this is great, and good, fine, fair enough. Yet we go and watch the movie, and she gets no lines. Is that not racist? Is that not racist? Because you took this great character who had plenty of lines in all the other movies, you make her black, and all of a sudden she gets no lines? That comes across as more racist to me, because all you did was use her face, use the color of her skin to market your movie. People go and watch the movie, and once again, they get another Disney bait switch where they watch a film and the character that was mainly used to market the film doesn't have any lines, doesn't have any point to the film, doesn't have any point to the story at all. And another problem with the character development in this movie is what they did with Peter Pan. Like I said, they made him the villain, they made him basically the bad guy in the movie, yet they also used his character to push this message about needing to dive into your emotions and how men should really be more emotional, because all Peter Pan does is worry about fighting and worry about getting things done and keeping people safe. He needs to start realizing that there's an emotional side to him as well, and all Wendy does is push him to tap into his emotions. Yet if we actually think about it, if Peter Pan was this emotional wreck, everyone would be dead, because he's the only one that properly fights Captain Hook and his whole pirate army. So if he was this emotional wreck and would get scared and was sad and was constantly melancholic and didn't know how to push his emotions to one side, they would all be dead. So it's this horrible message that Disney and many other studios keep preaching about how so many men need to start diving into their emotions because it's toxic to be stoic. And to me, that's a really bad message to send to young kids, because not just men, not just young boys and young girls, everyone needs to know that there's an importance to being stoic, and not everyone can be, and that's fine. If you're an emotional person, be an emotional person. But there's a strong message behind knowing and learning to push emotions to the side, because at the end of the day, they don't help you with anything. Like I was always told by my mum, crying about it won't change the situation. Complaining about it won't change the situation. So the message that used to get pushed in movies about how you need to push emotions to one one side for the time being and tackle the objective ahead and actually tackle the challenge and complete it is now being labeled as toxic and dangerous. Yet, in all these situations throughout life, World War II, the Vietnam War, basically every huge situation that could have ended the world or ended our country and our society, we needed those people to stand up and to actually fight, and that helped us. Yet now, we're saying that's toxic, and to me, that's a really dangerous message to preach to children. Because at the end of the day, we all need and must have stoic people in our lives. So that was a huge problem that I had with Peter Pan and that I'm having with a lot of Disney movies because they keep pushing this message. And another message that they keep pushing throughout their films is that the maternal instinct is a myth. And they use Wendy to symbolize this because there's one scene where the Lost Boys say to Wendy, "Hey, can you read us a bedtime story?" And she goes, "No, I don't really feel like it. Peter Pan can read one." And they say, "Why don't you be our mother? I want you to be our mother." And she goes, "I don't even know if I want to be a mother." And it's like, oh my God, they just keep pushing this, and it's just so false. They act like the maternal instinct is a myth. It's a real thing. It's a real thing, and it's an important thing. You're not some second-class citizen if you choose to be a mum. You know, that's not a bad thing. Yeah, some people want to focus on their careers. That's fine. Go and be a CEO. Go and focus on your career. But being a mum isn't worse. I mean, what's the thing we're all most grateful for in our lives? It's probably having a great mother. I know for me, the most important thing in my life that probably helped me the most was having strong parents and having a great mother in particular. Because when I was sick, when I was feeling down, whenever I needed any sort of help, I went to my mum and she helped me because she was always there for me. And why? Because of the maternal instinct. There are times where your father just can't do what your mother can do for you in certain situations. Maybe when you're a little frightened or something's going wrong in your life, sometimes your mum is the only person that can really help you because they just have this instinct in them. They know how to best serve you as their child, and that's a true thing, and that's a beautiful thing. Yet Disney are pushing that like that's toxic as well, which is so rude and disrespectful to everyone's mum and to all the mothers out there who put being a mother above their career. And if you don't want to do that, that's fine. But let's not say that that's a dangerous message, because at the end of the day, it most certainly is not. So yeah, I guess that's my review or rant about Peter Pan and Wendy. It was just a horrible movie. There were really no positives to it at all. I was expecting to at least see a good Captain Hook, but Jude Law even gave probably one of his worst performances of all time in this movie. I don't know if that's because he just didn't do a good job, or he didn't care and was just using it to make money, which would be my bet. But yeah, at the end of the day, this movie sucks. I would not recommend it to anyone, but if you do want to go watch it, don't say I didn't warn you. I hope you guys like this video, and I'll see you all on my next one.